Isabella Smith from Southern Belle Events. Welcome. The first thing I wanted to ask you is what is the epitome of a bad event or a good event? Like, what makes the difference?
Yeah, I think what I've heard most from guests, and I'm sure that you can relate to this, is the food. No one wants to go to an event hungry, and come back still hungry or not satisfied. You know, it could be either not good enough food, not filling food, not enough food for the amount of people you have. Um, that's definitely a big one, though. So your wedding can be amazing, but the food can be bad, and that will stick with someone in their head. They'll be talking about it or thinking about it and think, "Yeah, that wedding was awesome, just the food could have been better." Um, you know, so that's a big one. I think another one is probably just the flow of the wedding, just making sure that, the guest or the bride and groom or, whatever type of event it is not going to be, like, interrupted. So, yes, an event planner likes to stay on schedule, but it's also important to watch the crowd, and watch the client and make sure, like, that they're enjoying their time. It's the event. That's what it's all about, celebrating and enjoying, family and friends. So, schedule's good, but you don't have to stick to it 100%. It's really more about, watching the crowd and making sure that they're happy and that you're just following along with how they're feeling.
Well, surprise, everybody. This is actually my sister. And one of the reasons why I actually wanted to talk with her is because we had a relatively unique upbringing where we grew up on as stereotypical Nashville as you get. Doesn't matter where I go or live in the world. When I mention Nashville, and then at any point in the conversation, if I ever mention, yeah, it was actually a horse farm, they're like, it's like the most stereotypical possible thing. But we actually did quite a lot of weddings, proms. We even did your school proms, which we'll get to a lot of this later. But I really wanted to hear your perspective on this because it is so unique, and I don't think either of us realized how unique of an opportunity quotes it was as we were in the moment, as it often is. But looking back, you're like, what in we were doing literally like a wedding every single week for quite a long time. And it was a lot. So so just to follow up on that, what's worse? Not enough food or bad food?
Bad food.
Bad food's worse. So it's, I guess, always better to have people wanting more.
Either way, they're gonna if it's bad or if the food is just not enough, either way, they're gonna go and get more afterwards, like go by McDonald's or, Wendy's or something like that. But at least if they're talking about the event, they're gonna say, "Oh, yeah, that food was so good," rather than, that was terrible food. I got food afterwards." They're more likely to talk about getting food afterwards if it was bad food rather than it was good food and just didn't get enough. But the key is great food and enough for everyone. That is how you have a happy crowd.
So what is one of the ways then that you would ensure that there's enough other than riding the caterer, and just riding on their back before the event? But other than that, what is some of the things that you would do to ensure? Because by the way, the reason why I asked that might sound really obvious, but there's quite a lot of how many weddings have you been to where there's just not good food or it's not enough, like a shockingly large amount, right? And you would think
Oh, yeah, for sure.
yeah, what are some of the ways that you, right, both as an intern as well as Southern Bella Events, ensure?
I think it depends, where the event is taking place, you know? My most important thing is whoever's the client is, for it to be food that they enjoy, that they like. And honestly, the food that people normally like the most at events is simple food. It doesn't have to be a well done steak with really good sides and mashed potato or a good chicken, because that's great and everyone loves that. But when you're making those types of foods in bulk, it's just not the same. So I found most people that come to an event and love it. It's simple food. Like I know I went to an event, some people ordered, they just ordered in bulk Chipotle. And it was great. I loved it. Um, for my wedding, I did pizza and everyone loved it and it was amazing. So just I think the key personally is you don't have to be super formal um, with the food choices. Now, some people like to be formal with that. I just think when you're going to choose that option, it needs to make sure to be a good vendor or a good caterer. Um, Making sure that they've got down that knowing how to make it or pre-make it. So, excuse me, knowing how to make it before and keep it fresh, or if they're making it during, um, having that down of the guest count and the food count in a certain amount of time. What I do normally just to make sure you have enough is I always order a little bit above because whether or not you order above, you're not wasting that money. Like people are going to go for seconds, but as long as they get enough the first time and can't go for seconds, they're still going to be happy. Um, so I think obviously asking the caterer should be if you have a qualified caterer, you should um, be able to ask them, and they should have a good answer of how much they should have. That's going to be enough. Um, if that's not the first step, then the second step would be, like I said, ordering a little extra, but whether that's going to be for the actual guest or also um, for the caterers that you have or for the vendors that you have, they're going to have to eat as well. And most events, you have to, provide that for them. So I just think ordering a little more than what is expected because most events, all the time, I see random people just coming, people they know, but they necessarily didn't invite. They always show up. So always order extra. Personally, I think it's not a bad thing to have leftovers.
You know, and I was gonna say that, right? And that's the other thing. It's not like it's gonna go to waste, right? Like, I think for me and my wife's wedding, we literally had like I think spaghetti and meatballs and salad, and it was like the most standard Italian wedding possible. But there's with leftovers, the bride and groom are going to eat it, right? Or the bridesmaid, if it's a destination wedding, both parties, the bridal shower, right? Like there's so many different things. It's not going to waste. You're exhausted after such this anticipation that you don't even want to cook the next day anyway. Especially if you're not leaving right away. So that's an interesting, clever idea there to just get more.
It's a very simple thing just to order a little extra, but I know in the client's point of view, it's a hard thing to do because it's like, oh, do we need that extra? Do I need to pay that extra $300? Which is hard. But personally, for me, depending on someone's budget, it's always good to have that extra. And an idea that I like to tell clients as well when that's a little scary option for them is save that money instead of doing a gift to those guests. Have the gift. We'll just get cheap to go boxes and have that gift be that food at the end of the night. If there's a bunch of leftover food, tell each guest to grab a to go box and take some food with them. And everyone loves that. Like everyone loves if the food was good, then they're gonna love the idea of taking more of that home to be able to either snack on that later or hey, that's my lunch for work the next day. Everyone loves a free meal. I think that's a great way of ensuring there's enough food, but also trying to kill two birds with one stone, and there's your giveaway gift to everyone.
That's fantastic. I don't think I've ever been to a wedding where they did that, but that seems so simple.
Yeah, at my wedding, we had leftover pizza, and we gave out. We just put out a bunch of boxes, like pizza boxes, and everyone picked out their flavors. Took a bunch home.
A wedding I wish I could have been at. So,
I know.
but it is what it is. So, a wedding largely is like choreography. And this is not something I realized until I really got into the weeds of being a part of them so often. Everybody has places, right? But it's not just, right, the dress rehearsal, which is important, even though the movies make it seem like, oh, we got to do this thing, but it is. But there's like a whole choreography behind it. One of the things that we talked about the last time we spoke was this idea of flow or being as an event planner and a wedding planner. Like you can make a schedule all you want. It is what it is. Do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think making schedules is great. It's super helpful to have a base and something to go by, but you're never gonna fully stick to it. I mean, I think something the event planners like to stick to most if I was doing a wedding is, okay, I'm gonna stick to where the ceremony is. It's important to stick to the key parts of the event. Everything around that, what's more important is viewing and watching the guest and the client and making sure that they're enjoying and they're happy. If all the guests are still eating, but oh, on my timeline it says that we have to start doing the cake cutting or we have to move into this new art thing, like it doesn't seem right to tell everyone stop eating and then move on to just to stick to a timeline. It's okay to allow that to happen. The whole point of an event is for people to enjoy that moment and be in the moment. So, as an event planner, it is my job to allow the guest and the client to be in the moment. I'm the one that doesn't necessarily have to be in the moment and gets to see it at a different perspective. So, as long as I'm seeing that and I'm understanding, okay, so I move this back 30 minutes, do I have to change anything behind this? But from a guest point of view or the client's point of view, it should just seem like it flowed perfectly.
Then what is the difference other than like total lack of planning, total like didn't do this? What would you say is like the difference between a so-so planner from your experience and someone that is has the ability to charge a premium price because like what would make them that quality in the planner aside from relationships and with the best vendors, right? Like what would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, someone who's on top of it, and I think that applies to everything. If someone someone can be very well qualified for a job, but not necessarily be like a go-getter almost, not be ready up and ready to work hard every day. So I think that what makes a difference is between someone, oh, I get a text from my client, hey, I'm really wanting to change this. Instead of getting this arch, I want this arch. And then I want to add this onto it. Instead of saying, okay, and then kind of just moving on, someone who's going to be like, okay, let's go ahead. I'm going to email the people I need email to change this. I'm going to fix this. And then I'm going to get them the updated contract, just being on top of it. Um, Getting those things done ahead of time so you're not having to worry about it later. I've seen a lot of planners um, plan it, but not actually follow through with it. And it really showed the day of the wedding because not a lot of things really came through. It just wasn't put together. So you can definitely tell when someone is on top of it and ready to work. If someone is, you know, um, charging you a high quantity, I definitely think that someone should know their stuff, should have those good relationships with vendors, but also be ready to work and be on top of it. Um, Whether or not a lot of people, if you go to a 9 to 5 job, it's okay. I'm going to go to work. I'm thinking about it at the time, and then when they go home, they don't have to think about it. But with a lot of jobs, like in hospitality especially, it's not like that. You're always thinking about it. You're always on top of it. Same thing, for a real estate agent. Like, all right, my clients can't really call during that 9 to 5 time because they're at work. So I'm gonna have to be on top of it and be ready for it at 7 p.m. That's the same for an event planner. Our clients are probably working as well. So I have to be working throughout the day with my little details and then be ready to be on call all night or anytime really when that client can reach out to me. So someone who's going to be willing to work um, when they need to and when it's the time for their client.
So growing up on a venue the way we did, right? And we did a whole host of different types of events. Obviously, we did the majority were weddings, but we also did proms and hoedowns, like I said, we're in Nashville, and different things. So what kind of impact did that have on you? I think this was like preteen to early teen years when we were doing this. What kind of impact would you say that's why you got into events, or in general, what kind of impact did that have?
Oh yeah, it was a huge impact on me in so many different ways. I mean, yeah, I was probably I think I was 9 or 10 when we moved there, and when we started doing events, I was about 11 or 12, and huge impact because, first of all, who doesn't like being the party house? Like, I had all of our school homecomings were at our barn, were at my on our property, and that was fun for me, having everyone over, getting ready, and you're already there. You just gotta walk to the event, and everyone knowing that, like, it was my family's event venue was so fun and feeling like I'm hosting something that big. Uh, and then, having that availability for that space to throw, birthday parties and just eat a party home. So it was really good, really experience in that point of view, but also huge impact on my life now and what I'm doing. Yeah, I would definitely say in so many different ways the family farm had a lot of impacts. It had an impact on my name. Our old event venue is called Southern Trace. And so the memories from that and just that name really stuck to me. So when it came to naming my company, I didn't want to just slap a name on it. I'm a big meaningful person. I want everything to mean something, and have it. Um, excuse me. So I kind of looked back at my time and where I learned a lot of things, where I learned my love for events. And that's why a part of it is Southern Ballet Events because our old event venue was Southern Trace. And I wanted to take a piece of that with me into this. And then, just all the things I learned from being a 12-year-old and being able to see the behind the scenes of events. Everyone loves the event because that's the pretty picture, but there's a whole thing. Wow, the event, there's still a big behind the scenes going on that's kind of crazy and chaotic, but also way before. It's a lot of prep. So it was really cool to see all of that prep and then the beautiful scene. And then even when all the pieces are coming together, pieces still falling and having to be put together during that was really cool to see. And then as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old, I had to talk to a lot of people. Most of them were adults. Some were older teenagers or in their 20s. And that could be scary to a lot. And sometimes it was, but it really taught me, just how to have a conversation, how to have a good flowing conversation, how to network, um, and just see other people's point of views. It was really cool. It helped me in a lot of different ways. And I would definitely say it had a big impact on what I'm doing today.
It's funny because, again, it seems relatively simple, the ability to hold a conversation, look someone in the eye, shake their hand, make a cold call to a vendor, right? These are, to be quite honest with you, these are skills which were just normal human behavior up until about 30 years ago. And then they turned into like actual skills, right? And obviously, you can always cultivate different personality types to do better, to be better at networking and conversational and so on. But now it is far too rare, to be honest with you. So I do think that that's a very unique. It's very different to have a one-on-one, something like this, but then to be surrounded by 350 people. And
Yeah.
I remember you shuttling. A lot of the times you're shuttling them to their car, So you're making trip after trip after trip. And it's just more people, groups of 4, some of them drinking, some of them men, some of them small, some of them women, some of them elderly, and just seeing all of these different perspectives, right? And being able to communicate to all of them individually about the event. When you were doing that, were there any little tips and tricks that you got to pick up on from people about, oh man, that reception was blah, or whatever?
Yeah, no, it was really cool to kinda see the before and after, because I was the shuttle the whole night, so I'm the one that drove them, from their car to the event and kind of, "Oh, are you excited? Are you ready? What are you most excited for?" I got those pre-answers, and then I also got to shuttle them from the event back to their cars, like you said, so I got to, see the unfiltered, answers and what they really thought, so that was really cool to see people, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'm excited, or I didn't really wanna come," or, all that, and then come back. whether, they were sober or not, and just be like, "Oh, that was so cool." And, just listening, but also asking questions like, "Oh, what was your favorite part?" And some people would say, "Oh, the food was great. Oh, the dancing was so cool. It was so fun. Oh, I loved how the, uh, the bride did this with the groom, like, no one saw that coming." So it's really exciting to see someone else's excitement about little things. I definitely took that to note, what people liked, what people didn't like, what they thought was really cool, what they took away with them. You know, um, it was just really cool being able to see people's before and afters. I loved that, and just how their whole mood changes by the end of the night. And that's the whole point of events is, to make an impact in a whole crowd's life.
What would you say is like the perfect flow to a wedding or preferred in your opinion? Meaning like I think clients are going to have their own ideas of like cuz it's their big day, right? I want to do this and I the doves and this. But do you have like an ideal flow of what you would say is like, "Oh, for I didn't expect it, but this made it just like one notch a little better and I'm going to recommend that for the future."
Yeah, a lot of people, when you hire an event planner or even maybe as an event planner at first, think that it's a must for the event planner to tell every detail to that bride and groom or to that client who's hosting the party for someone. I think what makes it really good for them and enjoyable for them, though, is if you have that timeline. And like I said, it always goes back to watching the crowd, watching the client, making sure that they're enjoying their time, but also making sure that all of their details that they wanted, that they planned happen. Most of the time, if you're trying to get them, hey, like it's time for your champagne pour, and they're like, oh no, I'm enjoying this, we'll just skip that. That's fine. Like you skip it. Um, but being there to kinda, like, keep it flowing, keeping it along. Also, going back to my before point was you don't have to, like, what makes it look like it's flowing the best, if something in the background's going on, that's just not working out, not telling that client. Obviously, later on, you will tell that client, but in the moment, they don't need to know. You don't want to ruin their event. Most of the time, they're not going to notice. If you do tell them later on the next day, they're going to say, "Oh wow, I don't even care. I didn't even notice that. No one noticed it." You know. So, there are big deals and smaller deals, but I think the whole point of an event planner is to take control of that, take care of that, make those important decisions at that time. There's no need to go to the client and ask them. So I think the biggest difference change, or the biggest um, you know change in the flow of events is, are you doing your job and taking care of those little things?
A metaphor that kind of popped in my head as you've been describing some of these different things is like if you're on a boat and it's like really stormy, the wedding planner's job isn't to make the weather better. It is to make sure that the captain and the co-captain, right, the bride and groom, are focused on being in the boat and not worrying about the storm and just keeping like, if that makes any sense, like the illusion of like everything is great, but the chaos in the background. So then what would you say to people that man, the cardinal mistake, but it's kind of cheating because I experienced it and seen it so much myself, but still, like, what would you say to anyone who has this fancy idea, like, I'm going to do my own wedding, or my best friend who has never done this before is going to do my own wedding? What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I think it always depends on the person, but I will say no matter what, it's always more than they think it is. Um, the work that they're gonna have to put into that is all a lot. If even let's say someone is having a wedding and the bride does hire a wedding, I'm sorry, and the bride does hire a wedding planner, they're still gonna have to do work when you hire a wedding planner, especially if you're doing a wedding. Like, there's things that a wedding planner can do, like make your guest list, choose who's sitting. I mean, a wedding planner can choose who's sitting by each other, but some people, want to make it custom to who each table and who is who. So there's things that a wedding planner just can't do. So as a bride, that woman is already going to have things on her plate. And if you take away that event planner, the person that's doing all the logistics of it, whether that's finding, okay, this is your budget, let me find the vendor that can get what you want, but in your budget. Oh, okay, you want this design? You just give me the idea and like your little Pinterest board of what you want, and I'll put it together. Because most of the time, you're not going to find that design in one place. You're going to have to look 5 different places and maybe choose 3 of those to put it all together. So it's a lot more work behind the scenes than people think. And in the wedding scenario, a bride has so much on her plate already. So taking off those simple logistic things is a huge, huge difference. It really does make a difference. And then when you're coming just to the actual day, event day or wedding day, that's a big day. That's a special day. I think back then, bridesmaids and groomsmen and family, that was the whole point of having bridesmaids, groomsmen, is, "Hey, will you be by my side and help me make this a special day?" Whatever that means, whether that means, like, throwing the bridal shower, or, "Hey, the night before, we're all getting together and doing the florals." But sadly, um, it's just not like that anymore. Weddings are a trend, and people almost, some do still kinda work out like that, but not a lot, really. It's not common. Nowadays, if someone's asked to be bridesmaids or groomsmen, it's more kind of like, "Oh, this is so exciting, this is a party." And they almost feel like it's their day too, like it's a part of their which it is a special day for them because if a loved one is getting married or it's a party for them, but it's also now it's almost like a, what am I gonna get out of this? Oh, wait, we have to spend hours doing this, or I have to spend money celebrating, you know? So it makes a really big difference having that event planner nowadays because now weddings are trends. Whether you like it or not, they're trends. Um, and there's a lot of moving parts to the weddings. And so you want to enjoy your day and you want that family to enjoy your day, not having to worry about all those logistics of, okay, this table doesn't actually work here like we thought. I'm gonna have to move it here. You're the bride, you're gonna have to be getting ready. And okay, I'm gonna have my friend do it. Okay, but your friend's gonna do something that you have to be on top of. It's not a, oh, let me take an hour, move it around, see what I can do. There's a timeline and there's a very fine timeline the day of. You gotta move quickly. If something doesn't work out, you have to have a plan B and right away, you know? Um, Also just knowing how to treat, like, an event planner has worked with vendors. They know how to treat vendors. They know what vendors need, or they should know what vendors need. Um, and someone who's maybe not an event planner and just a friend doesn't know, how to put all those pieces together day of. So I think as it's within the budget, that an event planner makes a really big difference, especially nowadays.
Mm. So we talk with a fairly decent amount of entrepreneurs as well, solopreneurs, specialists, and so on. And one of the things I think most business owners don't realize or focus enough on is process and systems, right? Or workflows, right? What kind of workflows what goes into such like having so many moving parts?
Yeah, no, definitely having like a system down is important. Um, a lot of people like to have a lot of things in their head, like our father. Um, that makes it a lot harder for other people, though. I think whether or not, in my business, I'm the only employee, but I'm still gonna have to work with people, you know? So whether or not you have a business with a bunch of employees or just one, like it's gotta be written down because you're going to be having to connect and to work with others. So personally, I just started off simple. I just like Trello. It's kind of for me, I use it as everything in one. It's kind of like a calendar for me. You can make the little notebooks or a notepad. It's almost like having a digital notepad. And so I kind of have a what needs to be done, what is being done right now and what's done. Or I even use it like I put all my receipts on there. I put all the contracts on there. If I'm doing an event for one person, boom, I have a Trello board just for them where I put their receipts, I put their contracts on. So for that day of, a vendor comes up to me, oh hey, I forget, am I supposed to be giving you two of these or just one? But I brought two. Oh, instead of having to remember and think about it and take that time, nope, let me pull it up. I'll look at our contract and it's right there. Everything I need is in one place. Super simple. I think that's important. No matter if someone uses Trello, File Planner, um, notes on their phone, or uses an actual notebook. I love to actually write things down. So I like to write it down and always transfer. I got it in two places. So I think as long as someone has a system, um, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be $100 a month type of thing. Like, get a system that works well for you, but also can translate over for other people pretty simply. I think this is probably the most important thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty simple girl. I use Trello. I use a notebook and a pen, uh, and maybe I'll upgrade eventually. But for now, it's working.
If a business has never used a CRM or anything along those lines, actually, I always start them off on Trello. And you can do Anastasia, and you can do there's like a lot of different options, right? But like, why? Right. Trello has it all. It's so easy to train people because it's color coordinated. It's exactly what you're describing. There's cards, there's columns, and there's rows. And then they have their automation butler as well. So fantastic, which makes tons of sense. So I assume you have some form of like checklists already out or template boards that when you get a new client, it's not like, oh, I got to remember, what do I need to do? Oh, the floral. And then it's like you already have that list of like, well, we're going to need all of X, Y, or Z. And then anything from the client added on is a different conversation, I'm assuming. But in general, the checklists and all of that.
Yes, definitely. I think being, prepared ahead of time is super important. That goes back to that question of what is the difference between a regular wedding planner and a um, valuable high-end wedding planner is being prepared ahead of time. Knowing how I'm going to handle putting all of those logistics together, knowing where I'm going to put it. Um, yeah, being prepared is a big thing in event planning. Being prepared, but also being okay with not sticking to what you planned. You have to be okay with that.
In terms of, so being flexible is
Being
basically what
flexible,
you're
yes.
just, okay. And kind of go with the flow, right? Like, oh, like you said, we're not doing a champagne anymore. I've never run a wedding, right? I've only been on the back end, kind of all hands on deck type thing. So I'm learning, I promise. For yourself here, when you, like, can you think of any wedding no-nos or disasters in particular? Meaning, a client is like, I would really like to do, I'm making this up, by the way, but I would really love to do, white handkerchiefs and napkins and roses. And you're just like, hey, listen, I've seen this before. The red, the white doesn't go. Like, is there anything along those lines that are just kind of general no-nos?
As an event planner, you're almost there to listen and to do. Like, what they want. That's actually literally what they are paying you to do. They're paying you to take their vision and make it reality. Um, so whether or not sometimes if, I think it would be amazing, my job is to put their like vision and make it amazing, whether or not that vision is good or not. I worked with an event planner here in Naples and we had a wedding that was so cool, but it had so many different aspects of it. And the day of when we were putting it together, it was a little bit like after I have these two boxes full of beautiful, elegant things, and then I open a box that's full of colorful napkins, and then there's disco balls, and it's kind of like, I don't understand what we're doing here because all the parts are like separate. But this wedding planner was able to take this vibe because she said, "Oh, I know it looks weird now, but just wait. I think it's going to look really cool when we put it together." But the bride really wanted these. one of these things. It's like each thing is kind of a part of her. She's elegant, but she has a fun side as well, and she wanted her wedding to look like that. Oh, I gotta show you the pictures. It actually came together so well. You walked in, and it was elegant and it was beautiful, but, it was also like, "Oh, this is cool." Like, this is elegant, yet cool, and, it coulda gone really bad, depending on that wedding planner. If she had a wedding planner that wasn't able to take her vision of that, all of those things combined, and put it together well, it kind of just looked mismatched and not right, but no, this wedding planner really knew how to bring in the fun side, the colorful side, but also the elegant side, and that was really cool to be put together, and that is what a good wedding planner is supposed to do. So whether or not that person says, "Oh, I want this," I mean, it is our job to do it. We can advise, okay, so I have, I've seen situations where a bride is like, um, "We really want this food. We want this food specifically. Can you cook this?" To the caterer, and the caterer's been like, "We can, but if we cook this, like, it's not gonna last long, and so it's going to, be bad by the time guests get to it." You know, that planner, can advise something, but it just really depends on that client whether they actually want to listen to it or not. What my job is, if they don't listen to it, to then make it work. Sometimes that's the hard part, but sometimes that's the really fun part. I think putting together that example of the wedding that I gave you of the elegant yet fun and crazy colors was probably really fun. It was challenging at times, but it was really fun being able to put those together and different. You know, it's really fun when an event planner has outside of the box, creative, and different weddings. You don't want to plan the same wedding every time. So, or event every time. It's more fun when it's catered to the client.
I'm going to do a little bit of a rapid fire here and ask you the questions that I know that I'm not too dorky and alone in asking, but how do you solve for Bridezilla as a wedding planner?
I haven't really run into bridezillas, but the moms, man, it's always the moms. They're either wanting it their way, not the bride's way, or they're literally changing every detail every other day. I'm having to change a new thing, which is no problem. I have no problem with changing details. But yeah, I mean, just assuring. You just have to assure your bride. If you have a bridezilla, assure them, and show them the proof as well. Most of the time, if it's a bridezilla, it's almost like um, a very, not, I don't want to say OCD, but someone similar who likes things to be put together, likes to see it. It needs to be in detail. So sit down with them, assure them, and then prove that assurance. Here, oh, we're this it's going great. We have everything under control. And let me show you. Here are the contracts that I already signed, and here is all the pictures of what everything that looks like, and this is what it will look like together. I think that's probably anyone who's a bridezilla most of the time is just because they're really nervous and uneasy if it's going to come together perfectly.
Worst wedding disaster that you've ever experienced?
It was a beautiful wedding because of the bride and groom and the people that were surrounding that event. Um, but the logistics side of it was not there. However, you could tell everything was very last minute. I mean, to make this pretty much the worst, I hate saying it, but to make it the worst event that I had necessarily been to was because um, it was last minute put together. I mean, you showed up and the seating place, like the place seatings weren't done yet. So no one had a place to sit. So everyone was standing around. There was not enough food for everyone. Um, so I'm assuming, that said wedding planner got the guest count wrong, and did not order enough food, which in that case, bringing back to that question that we had a while back about, how do you make sure that there's enough food? Order a little extra, you know. Maybe if they ordered a little extra, then it would have been the perfect amount for everyone, So I think in that case, there was a lot of things. And that's the thing is most of the times, if one thing happens, that's okay. Every event has one thing go wrong. It's more how the the event planner handles it. And I think really what came down to is that that event planner did not handle those situations correctly. So I think if those situations were handled and taken care of and had a plan B, it would have been okay. I don't think people would have cared. I don't think I would have remembered it as a bad event. Um, but I think it's because of how those situations were handled.
What do you want to bring to Southern Bella events that's a little unique versus the other guys?
Yeah, I don't want Southern Bella events to just be an event planning business. Um, I don't want it to be a business. It's going to start off like that, but what I really want it to grow into is a community. My goal at the end of this is to not just be an event planner, but be an event planner, be someone, I want to cater to both, whether that person has a high budget and can afford, oh, I'm doing a birthday party for my kid. It's going to be big. I'm going to hire an event planner. Or whether there's someone who's like, oh, I want to do a really special event for my kid, but I can't afford to spend, $1,000, 2,000 on an event planner. Um, how can I do this? I want to cater to both and I want it to be a community. So eventually, I would love to make it more also into kind of like where I can do workshops, you know, um, and teach those people that can't afford wedding planners how to do it on their own. Because, like we said back in the podcast earlier, is back then weddings weren't the same. Now they're trends. Now it's about how expensive is this going to be? How much florals can I have to make it grand? How many colors can I do? You know, and back then weddings were about or events were about celebrating and it was about who you were with, what you're celebrating, and that's what made it big. All the little things that you put together were just extra, and now it's like that those little things is the important part of it. So I want to almost bring back that old way of doing it, and that's why I know most business owners might say, oh, that's not really smart teaching people um, how to do your job. I'm not worried about that. There's always going to be people that don't care to do events, don't care to do those little details and know those things. They'd rather just hire someone because to them, their time is better spent elsewhere. So I'm not worried about necessarily losing that business. What I'm worried about is are people actually knowing the meaning of events and enjoying those events. I want to bring that back. So yeah, I would love it not to just be an event planner, but also to do little courses where I can teach everyday people of how to make dinner um, fun and exciting for your kids or your family or a date night, just by simple things like how to lay out a beautiful place setting. That's not cost of that's cost effective. Um, so yeah, that's my main goal eventually is to make it into not a business but a community.
So would you say that on that note then, which I didn't really anticipate asking, but on that note, would you say that the way we grew up in kind of that Italian American household also affected you in terms of, dad was quite often working and it was quite common to have sales calls and so on, after dinner and late at night, but some way, somehow dinner was always a thing. Right. It wasn't just like, yeah, very rarely, right? Growing up, was it like quick, right? Or was it like, what is it? Like a microwave dinner, right? Like it wasn't a microwave dinner. It was a good thing. It was an event for pun intended. Would you say that also affected you in that way?
Oh yeah, no, it definitely affected me in so many ways. Um, Being able to see, our parents both had full time jobs. It's not like one was working, the other wasn't, and that's why they could make dinner and it make it special. A sit down where we all sit face to face together. They both worked full time jobs, and then, like we said, they had the venue, so we would watch them work a 9 to 5 and then come home and then have to work 5 to 9, 5 to 10, and then somehow I don't know how they do it, but they still figured out how to make dinner a family time and a time for us all to sit down. Um, Definitely helped that our dad was a great cook. He could cook some really good meals, but I think the most important part of it was that they simply made time for us to sit down to talk, and eat with each other. Instead of we didn't eat in front of the TV, where there was no contact, no, talking and seeing each other. And I think that really makes a big difference. And yeah, we didn't have necessarily microwave meals and stuff. I think it's okay, if people do. That's not what makes the difference. What makes the difference is the fellowship, and making that time. And it's very clear to me that no matter how busy someone is, you can make the time if it's important. Our parents, I mean, still to this day, are so busy. And back then, especially, were very busy. Like I said, 9 to 5, and then all over from 5 to 9 again, and they still made it work. So it's really about making it work and having that fellowship, and that's what made events special to me because dinner was an event every night. So I like to be like that now and make little things an event, when my friends come over, I'm making it an event. It's exciting. It's fun. When my friends, I'm a big birthday gal. I'm not a, you get your birthday. I'm a birthday week, and I like to make that fun and exciting, and special. And that doesn't mean I have to spend a bunch of money on gifts or a bunch of money on decorations. Um, I think food brings a lot of people together. So it goes back to the first question you asked me is what's the biggest thing? I mean, food normally, you know. And I think that's really cool how dad was able to take something he loved to do, and make a really good meal and make it into like a time for family fellowship.
So the last question is: you actually broke your own card. You kind of performed the cardinal sin in the event planning world. You planned your own wedding. Um, what did you love about doing that? What did you hate doing about that? And how would you do that different?
I did do that. I did it because obviously I've had about like 4 years, well, way more than 4 years of experience in the event planning world, and being an assistant of all of those logistics and details, and then being assistant on day of, um, and then growing up in it. So I kind of knew the basics of it. I will say it was definitely harder than I thought, and this is why I say it's important to hire that event planner because I wasn't just the event planner, I was also the bride. So I had to deal with those who are we inviting, and then also, there's always gonna be family stuff. And people are going to say what they want and think whether or not they're the bride or groom. Um, you know, and so you kinda have to cater not only to yourself, but family and other people. And so it was hard, whether or not I am an event planner and I know the basics and I know the logistics, it was still hard to do the job of the event planner and also be the bride. And that's why I think it's much better to just hire an event planner because you're still gonna have to do that work. But and that's what I learned so much throughout that process. I think it was really good for me. I kind of wanted that to be my trial run. Like, am I ready for this? Do I want to do this as a career? So I really dug deep into that, tried to be creative, in a lot of things, and used it as my trial run. I tried to be creative. I tried to be very detailed. I tried to work with a lot of different people, making those connections. And I learned that it's hard. It's not easy. But it was really cool to see all of those little parts. So many details. I mean, there's actually hundreds of details. Whether or not there's a plan or not, they're going to be there. And whether or not you are having a big wedding or a small wedding, there are still so many details to each wedding and just things that people really don't even think about. So it was fun, it was exciting. I had my, former boss be my day of planner, and because I trusted her and I gave her every single detail and everything I knew about that wedding day and had to release the reins and let her take control day of, which was nerve-wracking and scary, but it was great, and I was really glad to have hired her as a day of planner so I didn't have to worry my day of what was going on and what was being put together.
Interesting. So you, even being an event planner and doing your own wedding, you still hired the day of.
Oh, yeah.
Going back to that metaphor of the boat. with the captain and co-captain, and you're just trying to like, it's all good. Well, thanks for talking with me. Southern Bella Events.
Thank you.